I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Wednesday, 14th March 2018. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. In the headlines tonight, nationally, the government is denying that it is a non-compliant tax jurisdiction. Internationally, Trump's pick for new CIA Director Gina Haspel oversaw torture. And in sport, world number 2 Caroline Wozniacki has fallen to Russia's Daria Kasatkina. We have the details of these stories, the weather and Carib update all ahead in tonight's edition of SKN News Now. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis is rejecting and distancing itself from news which broke this week that the Federation has been added to European Union or EU list of non-compliant jurisdictions for tax purposes. On Tuesday, the Economic and Financial Affairs ECOFIN Council of the EU adopted the Council's conclusions on the EU's list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. Based on the criteria set out by ECOFIN, the determination of whether a country is cooperative for tax purposes is based on the territory's tax transparency, fair taxation, and implementation of anti-BEPS measures. In St. Kitts and Nevis's case, the country was blackballed for facilitating what it described as a preferential tax regime and over concerns by the EU that the Federation has failed to comply in respect of fair taxation, where a jurisdiction should have no preferential tax measures that could be regarded as harmful, and b, a jurisdiction should not facilitate offshore structures or arrangements aimed at attracting profits which do not reflect real economic activity in the jurisdiction. This is a direct reference to the Federation's existing tax regime as it applies to provisions for offshore companies. In response, Financial Secretary Hilary Hazel said on Tuesday afternoon that St. Kitts and Nevis does not consider itself to be non-compliant and has in fact taken measures to ensure that it complies with the international standards on transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes.
During the process of engaging with the EU, concrete commitments were made by the Federation to amend the relevant legislation to address the EU's concerns. The Federation remains optimistic that these commitments would persuade the EU partners to remove the Federation from the list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes and allow for a framework of cooperation and dialogue moving forward. St. Kitts and Nevis does not consider itself to be non-cooperative. On the contrary, the Federation remains committed to the international standards on transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes. This is evidenced by a largely compliant rating by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. Further, St. Kitts and Nevis has continued to expand its exchange of information network and is a signatory to the Multilateral Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance for Tax Matters. St. Kitts and Nevis signed and deposited the instrument of ratification for the convention on August 25, 2016. Additionally, legislation was passed by the National Assembly in December 2016 to provide for the implementation of the Common Reporting Standard.
Despite these measures, the reality is that the Federation has been cited by the EU. However, Mrs. Hazel says that St. Kitts and Nevis will ensure that it fulfills the EU's tax compliance requirements before the deadline set of 31st December 2018.
Based on the commitments given by St. Kitts and Nevis to date, it is clear that St. Kitts and Nevis is a committed and fully cooperative jurisdiction in the context of international tax transparency. In addition, in respect of the commitment specifically given to the EU, We anticipate a series of actions to be taken to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis addresses the EU's current concerns within the stipulated timeframe of 31st December 2018. In this regard, St. Kitts and Nevis will continue to undertake a comprehensive review of its legislation with a view to addressing the deficiencies, including amending relevant legislation in accordance with best practice in international tax matters.
In other news this evening, Southern Illinois University, or SIU, is facing a lawsuit from 3 individuals, 2 of whom have indicated they were injected with an unauthorized herpes vaccine in St. Kitts and Nevis. The individuals are demanding compensation from SIU for alleged adverse side effects they are experiencing from these trials. The lawsuit, which was filed Friday in an Illinois circuit court, also alleges that the experiment violated United States and international laws aimed at protecting the rights of participants in human experiments. Alan Milstein, a New Jersey lawyer representing the 3 participants, said his clients believe they should receive compensation not only for their medical costs but also for pain and suffering and loss of dignity. Milstein said he is still exploring legal options against the university, which shared in the vaccine's patent, set up a business account to collect donations for Halford's research, and promoted his work. The lawyer added that his clients are also particularly anxious to ensure such unethical experimentation on human subjects is not repeated. It was in 2016 that William Halford, a former researcher at SIU, injected a number of British citizens and Americans with his experimental vaccine in St. Kitts without the authorization of international health organizations or safety oversight, which is routinely performed by the Food and Drug Administration or an institutional review board. Meanwhile, the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force is still conducting an investigation into allegations that the experiments were in fact conducted in St. Kitts and Nevis. Both Prime Minister Honorable Dr. Timothy Harris and Minister of Health Honorable Eugene Hamilton have stated that they were not aware of the experiments, nor were they aware of how the vaccines were able to pass through the country's borders undetected. And with more than 1,500 persons in St. Kitts and Nevis suffering from glaucoma, the Ministries of Health on both islands have given full support to raising awareness of the condition. At the end of 2017, health authorities registered 1,527 cases of glaucoma, with 1,231 persons accessing glaucoma care. Over that same period, there were a staggering 191 new cases of glaucoma, with another 116 suspected cases. 2 persons received a surgical treatment for the condition. With this information at hand and the knowledge that glaucoma can be managed and sight preserved if the condition is caught early, Junior Minister of Health, Senator Wendy Phipps, says the ministry has been and will continue engaging the community over the course of World Glaucoma Week, which began on Sunday, 11th March.
A number of activities have been planned to mark the observance of World Glaucoma Week in St. Kitts and Nevis. These include the following. On Sunday, March 11th, there was a church service held at the Rehoboth Apostolic Church on Walwyn Avenue, Buckley site, to bless the week of activities. Monday, March 12th, Tag Day for World Glaucoma Day, also includes visits to the Cardin Home and home visits to glaucoma patients. On Tuesday, March 13th, there's a breakfast sale at the ophthalmic unit or the eye clinic at the JNF General Hospital. On Wednesday, March 14th, there are 2 key activities, namely an educational lecture discussion at 10 a.m. at the eye clinic at JNF, and 2, a social evening being led by the staff of the eye clinic. On Thursday, March 15th, glaucoma awareness walk and bike ride from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank roundabout to the Frigate Bellon adjacent to Timothy Beach Resort, and this starts at 4 p.m. And on Friday, March 16th, is Glaucoma Awareness T-shirt Day with the regular eye clinic as per established schedule.
Worldwide, there are more than 6 million people, or close to 12% of the global population, who have become blind as a result of glaucoma, making it the second most common cause of blindness around the world. By 2020, it is estimated that the number of people who will lose their sight to glaucoma will increase to 11.2 million. The St. Kitts and Nevis community is therefore being urged to protect their sight and take full advantage of the activities being held over the course of World Glaucoma Week and at the eye clinic at the JNF Hospital. According to Senator Phipps, there is a collective and individual responsibility the nation shares in preserving and protecting its vision.
We must all remember that we have an individual and collective responsibility to protect and preserve our vision. We should also consider vision care a vital part of our general health and well-being. It is a serious and costly mistake to take our eyesight for granted and then regrettably suffer from glaucoma, which can eventually lead to permanent vision loss. Living a life where the light has been taken from us is a major loss and a permanent disability that affects our ability to live independently.
World Glaucoma Week 2018 is being marked under the theme Green equals Go Get Your Eyes Tested for Glaucoma, Save Your Sight. In other developments, the Pan American Health Organization has made a significant donation to the Ministry of Health in the form of medical supplies. The donation came as a result of a request for support from the local government to the organization following the 2017 hurricane season. PAHO's donations included wheelchairs, walkers, hospital beds, baby supplies, stationery, needles, clothing, and oxygen machines. During a brief handing over ceremony on Tuesday, Ministry of Health officials expressed appreciation for the tremendous donation and indicated that the supplies will be distributed among the country's health institutions as well as the Department of Social Services. PAHO's development consultant Minerva Sadler noted the Foundation's commitment to building relationships with St. Kitts and Nevis and conveyed that the donation is just phase one of PAHO's involvement with the Ministry of Health to improve the healthcare system in the Federation. The PAHO Foundation was founded in 1968 and is a non-profit organization created by PAHO with the mission of improving the health and well-being of the people of the Americas. And that brings to a close our national developments this evening. Stay with us. Up next, international developments. Gina Haspel has been tipped to take over from Mike Pompeo and become the first woman in the United States to lead the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. But she could face a tough confirmation hearing in the Senate, given past allegations she oversaw the torture of detainees in a secret CIA prison in Thailand. She's been the agency's deputy director since 2017. Patty Culhane reports.
Gina Haspel spent most of her career at the CIA undercover, so there isn't much video of her. But as she prepares to try and take the top job, we are going to see a lot more of her and hear much more about her past. She was in charge of the facility in Thailand, codenamed Detention Site Green. The Senate has detailed what happened to captors there, like Abu Zubaydah. He was waterboarded 83 times, beaten by having his head slammed into a wall, deprived of sleep for days. He was kept in a coffin-sized box, possibly with insects, for more than 11 days, and held in a small box less than a meter tall for 29 hours. The report also says that Abid al-Nashiri was held and tortured at the same site. According to reports, she was clearly in charge. According to one CIA cable, quote, only the detention site Green Chief of Base would be allowed to interrupt or stop an interrogation in process, and that the Chief of Base would be the final decision-making authority as to whether the CIA's interrogation techniques applied to Zubaydah would be discontinued. Zubaydah had to be revived once after waterboarding. The torture didn't stop. Human rights groups are outraged by her nomination.
So the idea that she would be put in charge of the CIA should send shivers of terror through most people who care about international law. This is a woman who is complicit directly in the torture of 2 detainees in Thailand, and then was the chief of staff of the Counterterrorism Center back in Washington as they rendered dozens and dozens of other detainees, some of them merely innocent people who were swept up.
She'll have to answer for more than that. There were videos of some of that torture. Haspel reportedly signed the directive to have them destroyed. All of this will be a big debate when she comes before the Senate to try and get confirmed. Democrats will be under pressure not to vote for her, and if that's the case, she can only afford to lose one Republican vote and still get the job. Still, President Donald Trump is sending a message with this nomination. Just like he said on the campaign trail, he's fine with torture and also apparently fine with promoting those involved with it.
Russia has defied an ultimatum from the United Kingdom over the poisoning of a former spy. Prime Minister Theresa May had given Moscow until the end of Tuesday to explain how a Soviet-era nerve agent was used in the attack against Sergei Skripal and his daughter. But the Kremlin has refused to cooperate with the investigation. Barnaby Phillips has the latest details.
Is this the lull before the storm? The British government says it's looking at ways of responding to what it believes is an outrageous act by Russia.
So this is part of a pattern of behavior by Vladimir Putin and his regime. And you're seeing this reckless support for the use of chemical weapons all the way from Syria to the streets of Wiltshire in our country. And I've been encouraged by the determination of our friends to stand with us.
Except that friends aren't so predictable these days. The American president, shortly after sacking a Secretary of State who was highly regarded by the British government, says it sounds to him as if Russia was involved in the nerve agent attack. But in Moscow, the Russian foreign minister said Britain was being obstructive, refusing to give Russia samples of the nerve agent so that it could carry out its own investigation.
Russia is not guilty, but Russia is ready to cooperate in the framework of the Chemical Weapons Convention, only if the United Kingdom takes pains to fulfill their legal obligations according to the same document.
London's luxury properties, luxury shops. Could Britain target Russians who spend money here? An anti-corruption group estimates more than $1 billion of suspicious Russian wealth is invested in UK property.
Well, it's certainly the case that some of the individuals that we've identified in this research are well known to the Kremlin. So if they were to find themselves subjected to police investigations by unexplained wealth orders, for example, then that would send a very clear message to the Kremlin that corrupt individuals and their illicit cash are no longer welcome here.
British politicians want to send a message to Russia that they won't tolerate what they see as a brazen attack on British soil. But they also hope to cooperate with Russia on issues like containing Iran and North Korea's nuclear ambitions. In other words, Russia's international significance presents Britain with a diplomatic dilemma. Britain says it's ready to act, but if this crisis escalates, Western unity could come under great strain.
Still to come in this evening's news presentation, sport, the weather and Carol update. And in sport this evening, tennis specifically, world number 2 Caroline Wozniacki was beaten by Russia's Daria Kasatkina in the 4th round at Indian Wells. The Dane, who could have reclaimed the top ranking by winning the tournament, was beaten 6-4, 7-5 by the Russian. Romania's Simona Halep, who moved into the quarterfinals with a 7-5-6-1 victory over China's Wang Qiang, will retain the number 1 ranking. Kasatkina, ranked 19th, lost 10 of the first 11 points of the match, but hit 20 forehand winners on her way to victory. She overpowered Wozniacki, breaking her serve 6 times and winning 54% of her first serves. Kasatkina has previously beaten Wozniacki in straight sets in the St. Petersburg Open in February. She will face Germany's Angelique Kerber in the quarterfinals, following Kerber's 6-1, 6-1 win over France's Caroline Garcia. Kerber, ranked 10th in the world, has won 16 of her 19 WTA matches this season. Former world number 1 Karolina Pliskova also made it through to the quarterfinals, beating 16-year-old Amanda Anisimova 6-1, 7-6, 6-2. American Anisimova, a tournament wildcard, had beaten 9th seed Petra Kitkova in the 3rd round. Czech Pliskova, the world number 5, will play Japan's Naomi Osaka, who beat Maria Skarf of Greece 6-1, 5-7, 6-1. Venus Williams also progressed to the next round with a 7-6, 8-6, 6-4 win over Latvia's Anastasia Stevatskova. And with that look at sport, we now have a look at this evening's weather forecast. Conditions across the Federation tonight will be fair to partly cloudy with a 30% or low chance of showers. Winds are southeasterly at 9 to 17 miles per hour. Seas are moderate with wave heights of 1.5 to 1.8 meters or 5 to 6 feet. Small craft operators should exercise caution. The sea level pressure is 1018.3 millibars or 30.07 inches. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:19 a.m. That look at the weather has brought us to the end of this evening's news presentation. And now for a recap of our top stories this evening. Nationally, the government is denying that it is a non-compliant tax jurisdiction. Internationally, Trump's pick for new CIA Director Gina Haspel oversaw torture. And in sport, world number 2 Caroline Wozniacki has fallen to Russia's Daria Kasatkina. I've been your presenter this evening, Ebony Brandon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay with us. Up next, Carib Update, followed by DJ Yardi.
This is the Carib Update News Service and reporting. I am Arcelyn Crosby. Grenadians re-elect Keith Mitchell with another clean sweep at the polls. This is the big story we are tracking this hour on the AM edition of Newsbreak for Wednesday, March 14th, 2018.
Come and experience fun, meet amazing people, and enjoy fantastic food at the 22nd Annual St. Kitts Music Festival. 5 days of festivities from June 27th to July 1st of 2018, with main stage performances from the 28th to the 30th. Here's the first wave of confirmed acts. The legendary Patti LaBelle, Queen of Dancehall, Spice, Miss Lauryn Hill. Many more acts to be announced. Book now and save the date. For more information, log on to StKittsMusicFestival.net. The St. Kitts Music Festival, an experience like no other.
Now for the details and this report. Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell led his new national party NNP to a historic clean sweep of all 15 seats in a general election, making it the third time he has achieved defeat in the electoral politics in Grenada.
It feels good that the people of my country has shown that level of confidence in that way that they've demonstrated in this election and of course in other elections. So it's a humbling experience and feeling.
The 71-year-old Mitchell, who led the NNP to a consecutive sweep following his 2013 victory, immediately called on the leadership of the main opposition National Democratic Congress to be a part of these social partners that will chart the way forward for the Tri-Island state. Mitchell easily won the St. George Northwest seat, which he has been representing for more than 3 decades, defeating the NDC's Ali Anthony Bryan Dowden by a 2,546 to 406 margin. Former NDC executive Peter David, who was fired from the party in 2013, easily won the town of St. George seat, polling 1,616 votes as compared to 789 for Claudette Joseph of the NDC. In the St. George South constituency, Health Minister Nicholas Steele polled the most votes in the election, receiving 3,536 votes as against 2,679 for former public servant and trade unionist Raymond Roberts of the NDC. Mitchell said he is convinced that if his administration is able to bring Grenadians, including the estimated 20,000 people who voted against the NNP together, then the country would be better off. He again dismissed the notion that the clean sweep would result in the government having a free hand in running the affairs of the country. NDC leader Nazim Burke, who led the party into an election for the first time, failed again to win the St. George North East constituency, losing to NNP's Tobias Clement 2,458 to 2,319 votes. He congratulated the NNP on its victory.
We wish to take this opportunity to congratulate Prime Minister Keith Mitchell and the members of the leaders of the New National Party on what we must admit is a resounding victory. Yes, it was a very long and hard campaign in which we put forward our vision for Grenada, for Grenada's development, and for the governance of Grenada. Ideas that we thought would find favor with the electorate. Unfortunately, this was not the case.
Barbados-based political scientist and pollster Peter Wickham, who had predicted an NNP victory, said the NDC strategy was flawed. He said the party would have been better off campaigning on the promise of a strong opposition rather than trying to tell the population it would win the election, given the results of the 2013 poll.
To me, this is a signal to the NDC that they need to clean house.
The NNP said it will have an official victory party Wednesday in rural St. Andrews. This is Newsbreak from the Carib Update News Service. In more news, Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown is doing another major election concert this weekend that features American star Akon and Trinidadian Bunji Garlin. Brown pushed back at criticism that his party is spending too much money on such events, money that could be used to better public use. But Brown notes that the money for such events do not come from the public purse.
In 2016, when they had a big concert, we didn't tell them to spend the money, so they can't come and dictate to us now. We use our funds to do whatever we wish. As I said, these funds are not taken from the Treasury of Antigua and Barbuda directly or indirectly. It costs us a few $100,000, and we have benefactors who are funding it, and they're not local business people, that much I can tell you.
Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown. This has been another edition of Newsbreak from the Carib Update News Service, the Caribbean's newsroom. Reporting, I am Oslin Crosby.